Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book Wrath by John Gwynne, the fourth and final book in the Faithful and the Fallen series. I began this series a while ago, back in 2021, when I read the first book, Malice. And it was an enjoyable read. I had trouble getting into it, but it was an enjoyable read. And I determined to eventually continue on with the series. And eventually I did continue on with Valor. I read this in 2022, and I liked it more than I liked Malice, but the series just hadn't clicked for me yet. The series hadn't hit its stride. And then earlier this year, in the summertime, I read Ruin, the biggest book in the series. And I absolutely loved it. And this was when I was like, okay, the series is kicked in for me. I understand why people like it. I'm connecting with the characters more. I'm connecting with the plot more and the world building more. And I understand why the comparisons to Game of Thrones are happening. So I finally, I'd had Wrath on my TBR back in September or October, something like that. And then it just kept getting bumped and getting bumped and getting bumped because it was the humongous book and I was a little bit intimidated by it. And also just because for some reason I wasn't feeling it. I didn't have this urge to just pick it up. I know other friends of mine and viewers have been hyping the series, but I just didn't have that hype yet. But eventually, when I finished my December TBR, I was like, there's nothing standing in my way. I've got 2 weeks left of December. May as well get to it. So I finally read Wrath, and it is the best book in the series. It ties up everything beautifully, and it has catapulted the series into my top 10. I think I would now rank this as one of my either number 9 or number 10 favorite fantasy series. It is really good. And this is an interesting case where literally every single entry in the series gets better than the last one. So the first entry is good, the second book is better, the third book is great, and the fourth book is fantastic. Wrath is a truly tremendous book. When it started out, I was a little nervous that he wouldn't actually tie everything together because it was moving a little bit slow. This was partially because he has characters going off in different directions. And I thought, aren't they all supposed to be going in the same direction by the final book? And they eventually do, but there's a little bit of story left to be had. Corbin getting captured by the giants. They needed to deal with that story and a few other things. And so this book, there was so much about it that I loved. First of all, Macwin and Fidel, I don't know how to pronounce her name, they are two characters that I have really come to enjoy reading. And in the previous books, I enjoyed reading Fidel's plotline a little bit, but Macwin, he didn't connect with me. In this book, they became favorite characters of mine, and I was so excited anytime they were on the page. And I thought that their plotline was just fantastic in this book. I also thought that the plotline for Corbin was really strong as usual. He really is the central character of the series. And I thought that the plotlines of some of the side characters like Cywin and Coralyn and Adana are other main protagonists. Then you have the bad guys. You have the guys like Nether, and you have he was interesting to follow. Calidus, interesting to follow. I was very intrigued to see if we would actually get to see Azeroth, and if we did get to see Azeroth, how that would be handled in this book. And I was very pleased with the way Azeroth was handled in this book. I think it works really well. And then there were other characters that worked throughout the series. And this was the first time that I felt like, okay, I'm invested. I need to know what happens. And so by the end of the book, it's a lot of just action sequences, which I don't love reading. But I loved those sequences because I was finding out things that are happening to my characters. You're getting to see Macwin versus Lycos. You're getting to see Corbin versus Calidus. You're getting to see Veratus versus Nether. You're getting all these great duos who will have kind of rivalries, and you're getting to see the fruition of those rivalries. And This book, I've heard it's been described grimdark because of the violence, and it's a little bit graphic in the violence, but it's not as bad as it could be, and certainly does not have the crazy language or sexuality that Game of Thrones does. But what this also does that Game of Thrones doesn't do is pay off everything. I think that Game of Thrones kind of got with the Song of Ice and Fire, George Martin kind of got too excessive in the excesses, and then he also got too excessive in the number of characters that he had, and just wanted to keep adding characters. He didn't want to finish what he'd started. He just wanted to keep adding more. And so he really could have finished the series by now in terms of if he had cut out parts of books 4 and 5 in that series and it just focused. And I think that John Gwynne has a huge series and has similar tones and everything, but he focuses in and he pays off everything that needs to be paid off. It's not all happy. Not every character ends in this book with the most happy of endings. Several characters that we love die, some characters that we hate still survive. So it's not the most happy of endings. And yet it's still if you feel paid off, you feel like the journey has been worth it, you feel like the author has delivered on their promises. It's the whole promises and payoffs argument, and this definitely has the payoffs. And so I put in my tweet, when I tweeted about it, I said that this book is what Game of Thrones was promised, and this series is what Game of Thrones promised. If you're fed up with Game of Thrones right now and with Song of Ice and Fire, give this series a chance. I think you'll probably enjoy it. I think that in some ways this book delves more into the fantastical than Game of Thrones does, but when it comes to themes and when it comes to the action sequences and when it comes to the political world building, I think that you'll find that there's a lot of similarities. I wish that this series came in mass market paperback here. It's only in trade paperback, so it's these crazy, huge, behemoth books that you have to read, and so they hurt your hands when you're reading them. And I don't like that. I prefer having mass markets when I'm reading. But still, it was still an incredibly enjoyable read. I think, some of my thoughts would go into spoilers, and I don't really want to do that in this video. I'll just say that the final action sequence was really long, and he could have cut a little bit of it, but it was still really good. There were some moments of character payoffs. There's one particular character payoff that's very obvious, where they set it up, earlier in the book, where Corbin is training and he learns a maneuver. And at the very end of the book, at the climax, that maneuver is paid off. And it was such a clever way to foreshadow something and to set something up to be paid off. Some people might feel it's a little heavy-handed, but I feel like it is just a good example of the author telegraphing everything to the audience that needs to be telegraphed. There's no examples of, Arya kills the Night King instead of Jon because we wanted to surprise. No, it's properly, everything in here is properly telegraphed, and so I really like the way he did that ending. And this book, of course, sets up a little bit of a hook for a sequel series, which does eventually happen. Although I'm not going to read that for a while. I'll wait for a long time to read that, probably about a year or two. But it does set that up, and I do want to read more John Gwynne books. I'm instantly a fan of his. I really want to read his Bloodsworn saga once it's done. I believe the final book comes out in 2024. But I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I was surprised at how much I loved this book, and now how connected I feel to the characters and to the world building. So I highly recommend not only this book, but the whole series. And I can tell you, for me, literally every book got better than the last. And so you may start the first one and feel like it's okay or good, but in my opinion, it's going to get better by far. So that's my review of Wrath. If you've read Wrath, let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. But until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.